MacVoices at NAB 2026. MacVoices is in Las Vegas for NAB. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're right outside the Puget Systems booth, a very crowded Puget Systems booth, as you can tell by the presentation that's going on behind us. But we pulled Matt out of that crowd to talk about PugetBench. Matt, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you too, of course.
So tell me about PugetBench and why I need to know about it.
Yeah, so PugetBench is the benchmarking software we've developed internally. So Puget Systems is primarily a workstation ISV. If you're like using Mac, you might not care as much about Puget Systems as a workstation. But we had to figure out how does the latest hardware perform in real applications like Premiere Pro, Photoshop, DaVinci Resolve. And in order to do that, we didn't want to sit there with a stopwatch and a timer and manually do testing. So we wrote our own software to do benchmarking on all that hardware. And what's interesting is we're not just doing it on the PC side. We make it as platform agnostic as we can. So we run on Windows, we run on Mac OS, all the ARM stuff, Windows for ARM, we're doing a lot of that stuff as well. And it's really important because you can't really just rely on first-party information. Apple will say one thing and Intel will say another thing. And what's true? They're probably all true, but they're very cherry-picked. And so our real role with PugetBench is to come in and say, all right, we're going to strip all that away, and we're going to see how does this actually perform in the real-world applications like After Effects and Premiere Pro, so that we're not just dealing with marketing claims. We can actually figure out how it actually performs and how it changes in performance over time. Like After Effects, a couple of days ago, they released a new update, 26.2, made a huge difference in Mac performance for 3D workflows in After Effects. It bumped it by like 4x.
Wow.
And that's the kind of thing that if you're only looking at synthetic benchmarks or marketing claims, it's out of date. It was out of date 3 days ago. And now the only way to find that is things like our benchmarks.
I've never heard the term synthetic benchmarks, but I'm going to steal it. I love it. Yeah. I love it because you're right. The benchmarks are fine, but I'm kind of notorious for I don't care what the numbers say. I want to know how it's going to feel. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and a lot of those synthetic benchmarks, they're really easy to run. If anyone looks at reviews for new Macs and stuff, you'll see a lot of things around Geekbench and Cinebench and all of those, and they have their place, but they're not real. They're testing math, basically, is what they're testing. And testing in real applications like Premiere Pro, that's where you really get the best information. Because, if things change over time, it will reflect that. If things break, it will reflect that. And man, the number of times that things break because, not just because of, Adobe, there could be a bug. There could also be bad drivers or an OS update broke things. So many different things. So it's a little bit messy to deal with real world benchmarks like this, but you get so much more information out of it.
Well, I would think that in the benchmarking world, especially the way you're doing it, there's so many variables because you have processors, you have RAM, you have which version of the software you're running, and probably things that I haven't even thought about. Those are just the ones that jump to mind. And so, what may look good at first may not be as good as you think it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and you have a whole bunch of other issues as well, like with laptops. Well, does it thermal throttle? Everything like that comes into play, and that's one of the reasons why also too that whenever you're looking at reviews, new the M5 Max came out. You look at all the reviews, you have to make sure you're looking at the people who really know what they're doing, because otherwise you might get bad data even from a real world benchmark like ours. And really, our benchmarks are way better than those synthetic benchmarks I was talking about, but even better is if you can ever get your own projects loaded up on multiple systems. That's the gold standard.
Right.
Not really something you can really do at any sort of scale. So we're trying to find the best balance between lots of people can run this, it's repeatable, it's giving good information, and it's actually actionable information. So if you're thinking about, you're on an M3, you think about upgrading to an M5, you use Premiere, you can actually look at those numbers. Because often marketing claims, you're going to see 2x faster or 4x faster, when reality is 30% faster or 40%, which still might be well worth the upgrade. But you want to go into it knowing the reality of what it's going to be, rather than buying it thinking you're going to get 2x performance and it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can then publish the information about what the system exactly was that it was tested on, so people can compare it to theirs, and not to give you an out, but to give it a more accurate picture or perception.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so that's the nice thing with our standardized benchmarks like that. If you look up, different reviews that are out there, you can run our benchmarks on your own system. It's free for use for end users. So then you can compare either to those reviews, or also we have a database. Anytime you run the benchmark, it uploads into our database, and you can see where your system performs compared to like newer systems, and also against systems that are the same specs, same CPU, same GPU. You can see on like a histogram, I'm underperforming. Oh no, something's wrong. So like, yes, that whole annoyances in Premiere Pro that I've been dealing with, that's a real problem. It's not just Premiere it's slow, it's my system is broken. And then you can start going through the troubleshooting and figuring out what's going on, so you can get to the bottom of it and actually get it fixed. So it's a nice way to know my system is performing as it should. So if you run into anything weird, maybe it's your media is VFR and you didn't realize that your camera switched on you or something like that. So you can actually start then troubleshooting why you're having issues.
Right. Now, obviously, Puget Systems does video, and that's kind of the standard. Is this useful for people not doing video?
Oh, yeah. I mean, our benchmarks right now focus mostly on the Adobe suite. So Photoshop, Lightroom Classic, After Effects, and Premiere Pro. We also do have benchmarks for DaVinci Resolve, which basically now spans all of those Adobe products, especially now with the new photo tab. So we have tons of benchmarks for that. We're also working right now for Unreal Engine, which there's not as many Mac users running Unreal Engine for like virtual production or game dev, but there are some. And so that's going to be a really interesting one for us because that's a massive piece of software that's used by way too many industries. So it's a little bit of a giant thing for us to take on, but I'm really excited for getting that kind of across the finish line and seeing what kind of data we start getting out of Unreal Engine.
I'm funny you said that because I just based on some conversations here at the show, I had no idea Unreal Engine was being used for things that weren't game related.
Oh yeah. All the LED walls, or most of them at least, are running off of Unreal Engine. We see a lot of use in like architecture and visualization, so even engineering spaces. A little bit in like VFX and motion graphics. There's whole movies being made now in Unreal Engine. And we also have some interesting work flows for people doing AI training. So like self-driving cars, you make a game of a city and you put, pedestrians and other cars, and then you let the AI learn through that environment. So it's pretty cool how many people are using it now.
Yeah. And again, these are use cases that most of us wouldn't think about.
No, but they're out there and it's really cool.
Do you have a general sense of like where the value proposition stands in the basic systems? Is it on the Windows side and on the Mac side?
Yeah, I think right now the best thing for people to understand is that we are in a time, a little bit of polarities. There's a lot of things that like Mac and PC are both great at. Working with normal footage from like a GoPro, pretty standard. But then you get into things like ProRes. Obviously, Apple has all the hardware acceleration, so they're really great for that. But then on the like rendering and AI side, NVIDIA really is what makes Windows side way, way stronger. And so it really comes down to, I think today it's about being flexible. People have their preferences for Windows or Mac, and those are very valid things. So if you're doing 90% of your time, you want to be in whatever platform that you're most comfortable with. But when it comes to like the really heavy processing, that's when you have to look at like, all right, what's the time savings for me to go to something that I'm not quite as familiar with, and then just use that, because it's one of those things where it's like using a camera that you're not quite as familiar with, but it's going to be the better camera for this shoot. You make it work.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways, Mac to PC and PC to Mac. It's about using the right thing.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So where do I get PugetBench, and how much does it cost?
So PugetBench, probably the easiest thing is just to Google PugetBench, and we'll come right up. You can also go to the Puget Systems website, PugetSystems.com, and then it's under our products tab, actually. It's a recent thing moving from our marketing department to our product team. But it's free for end users. So if you're running it on your own system, you just want to see how your system compares to like new stuff that comes out, or you want to do troubleshooting, completely free for end users. You only need a license if you're using it for like commercial purposes. So think like if Dell wanted to use it to qualify their systems. Yeah, they got to pay a license.
Yeah.
But normal end users, no cost.
Okay, great. Well, that's nice. Thank you so much for the time. It's very interesting, and now I want to go and test my system and see how fast it's running.
All right, thanks, Chuck.
Good to see you. Take care. Folks, we'll have more from NAB in Las Vegas. Thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.